Right on.
Our plans.
Just about on the hour. Good timing.
There we go. Our plans.
Just about on.
Mute. And back to the, there we go, record. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Master Your Life, the show of insight, intelligence, and inspiration, where I ask you each episode to consider who is it you are right now and who is it you are most trying to be? What are you endeavoring to create in your life? And are there some things that you would like to tweak? And most of us would say, heck yes, there are some things I'd like to tweak. I'm joined on this financial wellness show, Recovery Road, with my wonderful co-host, Greg Bird. Greg, how are you today?
Amazing, Ashley. I always love the wise words of my son, Gavin Gregory. Really excited here today since we got kind of a funny story to tell the audience today. We have special guest Ben Forte with us. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, before we kick off the show, and I'll give you a little more in-depth introduction, how your name came up, which was, again, a real funny story. We always like to start with a meme of the day. So as you probably see, Ben, you sift through all this stuff on social media. There's a lot of garbage, and my kids laugh and giggle at me when I say that, because there's stuff on gambling. There's stuff on stuff that kids and adults alike should not be really spending a lot of time looking at. So this one we finally got to was from my Auntie Gail. And Auntie Gail, you got a great motivational one here today. So here's how it goes. It says, when our time on earth is done, money or material things will not matter, but the love, time, and kindness we've given others will shine and live on forever. Deep, very deep. Auntie Gail, thank you for that one. I thought that one would be a great thing to set the stage and the tone for today's show. So Ben, how your name came up was actually really, really funny, because we've talked on many, many shows. The episode we had with Yuga, we had an episode with Neil, and we talked about planned giving and how to use some of the stuff we do in our business and in the financial services industry, namely life insurance, to really create these legacies. And we got talking, we're like, so who would be a good name to talk about? And I said, well, Ben Forte is our number one guy. So, and Leah's like, my Ben Forte? Because I had no idea that Sharon's last name, her maiden name was Forte. And she's like, yeah, that's the same guy we're talking about here. So Ben, here you are today. So if you want to just share with the audience a little bit of who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it.
Well, thanks for the intro, Greg. You're too kind. Yeah, Leah and I have known each other my whole life, not her whole life, from baseball out at the farm in Viking up until now, and it's been super great to have Leah in my life. Is a great inspiration, as I'm sure a lot of people out there are feeling the same way. You know, I have to apologize to the listeners out there, and probably more the viewers than the listeners, because I saw on Instagram that you posted my headshot. And Greg, that is what we call the bait and switch, because that is a Photoshop photo. And between 1 and 10, I'm a good 7 out of 10 on that shot. And then people are logging in and they're like, who is this guy? He's not the same guy. This guy is like between 1 and 10, a soft 6 at best. So yeah, I've got to apologize to people out there. So next time I'm going to take a real shot, maybe just a candid selfie, and then you can use that one. But for now, this is what you're getting on the video. This is it. So yeah, thanks for the intro. You know, my world into financial services was a bit of a topsy-turvy one. I don't think any kid out there grows up and goes, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a life insurance salesman. Like, nobody does that. Right. So except for maybe you, Greg. I think you have the passion that is required for this job. So, but I always loved finances. I always loved economics. I always loved working with business owners and professionals. And so when I did some career research and kind of found my way here, this was this was where I ended up with a gentleman that I knew named 𝙼𝙗𝙬𝙩𝙡, who was a great mentor in the business at that time. And he's since retired, but he's the guy that kind of brought me into this thing, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, Ben, I can remember absolutely having a passion for business for your entire life, either helping other people to make decisions in business or supporting people in their business and in their dreams. And I think that's one of the gifts that you have inherited from your great father and mother is your imagination, and also your just bright shining spirit. So I was not surprised to find that you were actually doing this particular kind of work, planned giving. I just went, that is a total fit for you. I could just see how that it's much more than just sitting down with people and cutting a check for whatever. It's actually thoughtful investment and helping people for long term in their life. We started this show based on 7 generations planning. So we really wanted people to be thinking about, what are you trying to create for a legacy for yourself, your children, your grandchildren, and maybe if you're taking care of parents, how that might influence all the decisions that you're making. And so you're just in a great position to help people with that, not just from a local level, not just from a personal level or a local level, community level, but also from a global level, because you've been involved in a lot of stuff globally. So really very cool. Very cool.
So the audience now knows you're a humble guy. Calling yourself a 6 out of a 10, I think pales in comparison to a soft 6. Yeah, we won't use your wedding photo next time, because that was like your moment.
Jen made you look.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave you my best. I gave that photo. You used the best. That's as good.
Yeah. So the audience knows you're humble, but I gotta say, you are not only our star at PPI, you are like ranked our #1. And why I want to really exemplify what you do is because of this topic, because not a lot of advisors actually know how to kind of sift through these things with plan giving, using life insurance to create legacies, all these neat things that you can do. So you've got a real specialty there. But there's some charities in particular that you really support. And one we got talking about as we were interviewing you for the show was the Food for the Hungry. So if you want to comment a little bit on that one, Ben.
Yeah, Food for the Hungry is a great organization. We've been involved with them for many years, and it was a great fit for our business to be involved with them as well. I actually got to go on what they call a vision trip to Cambodia back in 2016, and that was a pretty eye-opening trip. I have a couple of stories if you want to hear them from that trip. But so Food for the Hungry, what they do is they go into these communities, and they're in developing nations. So I went to Cambodia. They're also working with some communities in Africa. But what they do is they have a 7-year plan. So they go into a community and they do an analysis of that community to say, what type of businesses would best fit this community? Oh, sorry. The screen is frozen. Is my screen frozen?
Keep going. You're good.
You're good.
Okay. So they say, what best communities would best fit this? So for example, if they went into a community, one that we were walking with in Africa, they went in and said, okay, the best business here would be coffee growing. And so they teach and educate all of the people in the community. Here's how you grow coffee. Here's how you bag it. Here's how you roast it. And then here's how you sell it fair trade to the world. And so they can bring outside money into the community, and that will create a self-sustaining community. You probably heard the saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. But with Food for the Hungry, they think if you teach a man the fishing business, then he can actually feed a community for a lifetime as well, as they employ people in the community and start and run these businesses. So for the longest time, we would actually buy some coffee from these communities and we would pass them out locally and say, we'd give them to our business owner clients who would give them away. It's kind of a business owners helping business owners type venture.
Right.
And it was super fun to be involved in, and they just sell this stuff around the world, and it's great.
Right. I love that example.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love the example of the fishing, because you wouldn't try to get somebody that's not in a fishing village to be a fishing village. The people who have a coffee village, that's what you get them to do, and get them to focus on. Somebody who's in a fishing village, that you would get them to do that. So you're not asking people to do things that are outrageous or something that they can't actually be successful at, which I think
Correct. And they don't just keep repeating the same business.
is
But
right.
in business, there's a lot of similar principles in any business that you choose. And a fishing business, actually, I only use that example because of the saying, like, I myself could not be in a fishing business. I get seasick way too quick, right? So that's not going to work for me. I'm on solid ground right now. It's the way it's got to stay. So in any event, we went to this Cambodia trip, and we went to villages that they had just started working with. And we went to villages that they had finished working with, and we were able to see this stark difference in the wealth accumulation and the lifestyles of the people living in the communities. And one of the reasons they do raise money, and if any of the listeners are Googling Food for the Hungry International, Food for the Hungry Canada right now, then I'd encourage them to get involved if they want to. And they do it through child sponsorship, but instead of one child being sponsored and going to school and doing the whole thing, they actually, when they do the analysis of the community, they say, okay, how much money are we going to need to run and build this? And then they say, that's going to be X number of dollars in a month. That means we have to get so many kids sponsored from this community to bring the money in for the whole community, so that all the kids get education, not just the ones that are sponsored. Everybody's getting the education. Everybody's building the lifestyle of the community. Super cool. But you can still kind of do the whole like writing letters to the kids you sponsor thing and stuff. I actually got to meet two of the kids that I had been sponsoring for the year for a number of years. I got to meet when I went there. So that was really fun. And then I got to meet a third child who I just started sponsoring, and I got to plant a tree with him in his front yard as kind of like our sponsorship tree or something. It was such a fun experience. But you know, when you get involved in giving, you go through this. You look for something that kind of grabs your heart, and then you go through this shift as you get involved with something. You know, maybe just from a philanthropic giving nature, or maybe you're giving of your time and your energy and your passion to something like that. Like I remember when we first arrived in Cambodia, it's the first time I had ever been, I would say, well, to Asia, and I had gotten so many vaccinations and shots before I went. And, you know, just enough to put a good amount of fear into your heart about where you're going. You're thinking, what am I doing that I have to get this many vaccinations? But it's just because you're in a community that your body's not used to. But I remember being kind of fearful, being, you know, in the hotel and waiting for us to go out to the northern communities, not really sure what I was going to run into. And my thoughts were all on myself, all on myself, looking around for mosquitoes, you know, swatting them down. But my thoughts were all of me. And when we were in this van heading towards the communities to see them for the first time, I remember turning and seeing out my window this child that was bathing in this puddle, and it was super dirty. And it was something that you see in like a World Vision commercial, you know, around Christmas time. And it's like immediately my thoughts and my emotions just shifted. They were all on myself before, and then it was like a 180, and it was just on what we were doing and the mission that we were involved in, the people that we were helping. And so that was a pretty fundamental shift for me when it came to giving. And then when we came back home from this trip, you know, we really ramped up our involvement there, because I thought it was really, really important, because I was able to see it firsthand.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, and what about a life-changing opportunity? You know, there's so many of us that think, you know, how can I get involved? How can I do something like this? So what inspired you, Ben, to find this particular one?
That's a great question. �荷🙑🙩, who I was working with at that time, he was involved with them from previous days, and he was sitting on one of their national boards. He had done a number of these vision trips in the past, and so it was kind of natural that he was super passionate about it. And he told me the stories, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like a great organization that we should be involved with. So that's kind of where it was birthed from.
Awesome. It's, I think, a challenge right now because people aren't traveling. And so to get boots on the ground and see these beautiful initiatives that are, growing across the world is more of a challenge than ever. Have you been able to continue to stay in touch with that via, our, current technology? Or how do you track those projects?
Well, being a corporate sponsor with them, they send us these updates quarterly, like graphs and charts and statistics from the communities that, pictures and things like that from the communities that we're working with. One more quick story, I guess, from that trip.
Yes.
So we are in charge of our sponsorship because we're in the financial world. It goes towards, like, in each community, they set up schools and they set up education programs and things like that. But one of the things they set up, and one of the most powerful things, is something called a savings and loans group. And this is what really kind of captured our attention, being in the financial industry. So it's the savings and loans group is basically like this small internal bank that each community would have. So they would take, say, $1, like the equivalent of $1, and they would put it into their bank account, or that would be the savings component. And then other people from the community are able to borrow from it. And then they pay a small interest to the collective, which are people from the community. So if you have money on deposit or savings, you get some interest as a return. And if you're borrowing money, you pay. And I remember being a Canadian, you don't really give that much thought. If you want a loan, you go to the bank and you apply for a loan. You don't have to work through a lot of metrics there. When you're in one of these communities, loans are not easy things to come by. You can't get a loan as easily. And so they create these opportunities. And I remember we went to one of these savings and loans meetings, and they knew we were arriving. And so this one gentleman, he brought with him his wife and his child, who was just a baby, and she was holding this baby. And so he's speaking, and our guide is interpreting for us. And he says, I knew you were coming, and I want to kind of do this as a bit of a show. And he took $2, and he says, $1 represents the repayment of the loan I took, and $1 represents my savings, because I needed to take a loan to put gas in my tractor to finish off my rice field. And he said to us, I know, and I wanted to bring my child to show you, because I have hope now in my heart that my child's future will be better than I ever dreamed that it could be. Because now they have the opportunity that, so for instance, in his situation, he ran out of money and couldn't finish the rice field. So he could just borrow some money and finish it out. Before, that would be complete devastation. If you couldn't put gas in your tractor and you couldn't finish the rice field, that would be devastating to you financially. But now he can do it. And I remember being in the van on the way back to the hotel, and being quite speechless about it. And I was just thinking, wow, he was so impacted by a thing that we would almost take for granted, and the society that we built with the banking system that we have. And to have such a small change like that just really brighten his heart and give him hope for the future, and give him the confidence to have a child now, having a child in the world that he's living in, with confidence and with passion. I think that was just something that really kind of gripped me, and I was really on board for that.
I love that story, Ben. And, we have so many listeners and viewers just kind of tuning in. There's so many different ways you can give back. And what you're describing is not only life-changing for them, but gives you such a really neat perspective as well. And I love how you tied in farming. So we're from farming families, and, the generations, right? You just kind of tied that next segue together. But then there's a whole other aspect, is the resources, the boots on the ground, all this other stuff in ways we can give. So think of over this last year, and please weigh in here, Ben, with your experience. Some of the charities we've seen here, good charities, ones that people really get behind, really passionate about, all of them had suffered a lot last year. A lot of the special events couldn't take place. There was a lot of donation dollars that literally just evaporated last year and weren't there. It wasn't possible to do a lot of those events where they drive all those donation dollars. And a lot of the organizations that many of us actually get behind, they're not government funded. So they really came into a real pinch for getting donation dollars. So that's where this whole talk about planned giving and charitable giving really came into play, where I spent my whole beginning of my career with the Heart and Stroke Foundation, and there was an actual job within the foundation called the Planned Giving Manager. And he worked with all the different charities, worked with all the different financial advisors like you and I, Ben, and everyone in our corporation, and really tried to tie it all together. Is how can we really use these life insurance policies? And if you want to let's work through some of the different ways that people would really want to hear, how can they set up their life insurance to really benefit not only the charities, but from a tax standpoint? Because it's like, do you want to pay the tax on your estate, or is there a way to actually eliminate it? And the answer is quite simply, yes, there is a way to eliminate it if you do it right and you plan it with an advisor. So I'm just going to pass the ball over to you, Ben. Maybe share with a little example of maybe a client you've worked on. You don't have to mention any names, but how that was maybe a thing and how you helped them bring a solution to the table.
Sure, that would be great. I'm just going to back up a little bit, tell people about some metrics, just so everybody's on the same understanding. So a life insurance policy is you pay a premium, and then when you die, a big sum of money gets paid out to whatever beneficiary you've designated. There's mainly two types of life insurance policies. One is a temporary policy, sometimes called term policies. Those last for a period of time and then they expire. Those are amazing policies for income replacement, loans. If you're needing life insurance when you take out a loan, awesome for those things. We don't typically use term policies for planned giving strategies because they run out. And with any term insurance policy, you hope it is a wild waste of money. You hope you outlive it, that you pay for it, that you've gone, it's expired, and the policy has expired far before you have. So we use policies that are more permanent in nature. These are sometimes called universal life policies or whole life policies. But these are types of policies that you put money into. They last the entirety of your life. Sometimes you pay for them for just a short period of time and then they're paid off. Or sometimes you pay for them forever until, an estate, and at that time they pay out. But they're guaranteed to pay out to somebody. Those are the ones we typically use for planned giving strategies. So there's so many ways that you can use life insurance for planned giving opportunities, and we'll talk about them a bunch on this call. One is super easy. So I had a client, and he had one of these policies for a long period of time, and he said to me, Ben, I don't need this policy anymore. I had it for such and such reason. I don't need this policy anymore. I think I'm just going to cancel it. And I was just going to, comply with his request and just cancel the policy. But I said to him, hey, do you have any charities that you support in a big way? Do you have anything that you're involved in like that? And he did. He had the Cancer Society was touched his life in some way, and so he wanted to give back to them. And I said, well, there's two ways that you can use your existing life insurance policy right now to actually help the Cancer Society. One way is you could keep paying the premium and you could make them the beneficiary of the policy. And if you do that, then you will get, well, we'll get into the taxes later. Maybe I'll just go through the strategy right now. The other way is you could actually give them that policy today, and that they could actually own the policy, and then you could commit to donating to them enough to cover this premium. And so he chose that second option. And now the Cancer Society is richer for it. So, there's so many different ways that he could do that. Do you want me to run through some of that taxation, Greg?
A little bit. So we'll keep in mind that every jurisdiction is different. So there's a lot of people tuned in from different countries. So the whole theme of that would be, please talk to a financial advisor that specializes in this particular planning and in their practice. Because I will honestly say a lot of advisors don't know how to have these conversations. It's a very specialized part of what we do, and you're just one of the few that actually can have that intelligent conversation, do that planning, and really take the laws of our jurisdiction, of our country, of our province, and then apply what you know through these policies, and then maximize the benefit, right? How to either minimize the tax, make the donation, make a legacy in the person's name for these charities. There's so many ones that you can pick where the rules will apply. So I love the example that you made, because that's real life stuff, where a guy was just going to cancel this policy. It'd be a shame. The
Sure.
life insurance company would have been just rubbing their hands together saying, thank you very much for
Yep.
buying that insurance all that time, paying all those premiums, and now you're letting us off the hook. Thank you. In this other, I like how you spun it, because I think more advisors need to really ask that question that you did. And thank you for asking that question, because now that charity was able to benefit by what you said. And the foresight that you had is, hey, maybe this guy does have a cause that he could represent, and he did. So it's a beautiful story, Ben, and great one to kind of start off the show of, how do you do this plan giving? So maybe talk about another scenario where you said that, hey, once say a husband and wife, there's a couple, you might have dealt with someone even just recently where now they've actually had this policy where the beneficiary is the charity, and then a big lump sum. So I've seen a lot of come through our office, either they're $1 million policy, $5 million, $10 million policy, where now you're wiping out any taxes to the estate entirely. Is it correct, right?
Yeah, like I'm Alberta resident, and we work in Alberta. We're licensed across the country, but we predominantly do most of our work in Alberta. So the way the Alberta taxation works is you get a tax credit for your donation, and that's around 50%. So if you donate $1 million, you're going to get $500,000 deducted from your tax in that year, which is a great thing. And then in Alberta, we have something called deemed disposition tax on an estate, which means that you're deemed to have disposed of everything that you're deemed to have sold, everything you have the day before you died. So if the day before you died, your house was worth $1 million, then you're deemed to have sold that. Or if your cottage was worth $1 million, you're deemed to have sold that. The big thing in our world is RRSPs are heavily taxed, because you're going to be taxed as if you pulled them all out the day before you died. That's the tax that's going to be owed there. Or if you own a business, you have a hidden partner in your business, and that's the government. The government kind of owns half of your RRSP, because if you died, you're going to have to give half of it away. The government kind of owns about 25 to 40% of your business, depending on how your business is structured, because that's the taxes your estate is going to have to pay in order to inherit the shares of the company that you worked hard to grow. And everything has a different kind of deemed disposition tax rate on it, farms and businesses and things like that.
So I'm going to ask you a question, Ben. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Leah a question, actually. So Leah,
go.
you're an owner of
Put
a
her on the
business.
spot.
How does that make you feel that the government is potentially an owner of all of that, and anyone listening? So this is why this is so important. Is like, do you want to donate all that money to taxes at the end, or is there another way? Is there a way that you really have something you can get behind and stand behind, like a charity? And again, it could be one of the many, many good ones that are out there that you want to support. And you can actually really dip down and eliminate a lot of those taxes by using some of these strategies. The key is work with someone who's intelligent in this area that can plan. So Leah, from your perspective.
Oh, I'd be, super annoyed. And also because super annoyed. As a ginger, I'll tell you, that's a lot of annoyed people, a lot. But also, because we have Huntington's disease in our family, I was not eligible for any whole life policies until the end of 2017, when they changed the genetic laws in Canada. So it pays to know what you're actually eligible for as well. So don't assume A, that you're eligible for anything. B, what that does is also has limited my ability to actually do these kind of strategies. So even though we can have all these great conversations, they don't necessarily fit for everybody. But I also now go 3 years, out of that status of the genetic, everything, not being eligible. I think, is there strategies now that I could implement? And the answer would be, yeah, absolutely, of course, because if I could, figure out a way to donate to either the Huntington's Disease Society or the people who are trying to take care of people with these debilitating illnesses, I would absolutely get behind that. And that I think it's also what annoys me about income tax is that absolutely does go to fund the war effort, which I am a peace-loving, as much as I say it would make me mad, I'm a big hugger. And so the idea of funding, the war effort, which we've been doing, for decades and decades, and instead of thinking wisely or even having the idea that you could divert your taxes away from that. And how important it is to make these intelligent decisions, because once you know, you can't not know. So once you know that your income tax is actually going to the war effort, are you actually okay with that? How does your conscience sit with that?
And I mean, everybody's got a different mentality when it comes around taxes and what they should pay and paying their fair share and what is their fair share. Yeah. And I mean, we live in a society that does require a lot of public funding for various different things. So, I mean, we have to pay some modicum of tax, but you really don't have to. But when you pass away, you can choose. Your estate can either pay your beneficiaries, it can pay your taxes, and it can pay money to charities. And really, with proper planning, you can choose the balance of the three of them that you want to have happen. And so if you just kind of let your estate go the way of a typical situation, most likely your beneficiaries are going to get some, but taxes are going to get a lot.
Now, Ben, Leah brings up another really, really important point. I love that you brought up term insurance, because just about every jurisdiction around the world has some form of term insurance that has a conversion privilege in it, where you can convert before a certain age. And why would that be important, Ben, especially with what Leah said, with some kind of health issues that creep up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just going to backtrack one quick sec. So if you have one of these permanent policies, we know that you can pay for it of a certain amount and that it's going to pay out at a certain time. We don't know exactly when that time is going to be. We know that it's going to pay out. So that kind of deposit of premiums into this kind of eventual payout, there is a value to that. So if you were going, so for instance, if you started a permanent policy and I said to you, Leah, you started this permanent policy, it's costing you X number of dollars a year, why don't you give it to me? I'm going to make myself the beneficiary on it and I'm going to pay those premiums for you. If you just started and you don't want it anymore, you might take that deal. Not to say that that's actually something that can happen to an individual to individual, but you might take that deal. Now, if you had been paying that policy and it's the same premium every year all the way up to your estate, if you were paying that premium for 20 years, and now at this point I say, Leah, give me that policy and I'm just going to pick up the premiums and I'm going to become the beneficiary. You might look at me and say, whoa, what's happened to the 20 years of premiums I put into this thing? There must be some value to this. And sure enough, there is some value to it. And the government sees value there as well. So you can't just kind of shift these things around a lot without any kind of consequence, because there is some value to it. But one of the things that is of advantage to that is if you give that policy to the charity, we can do a valuation of how much that's worth, and then you can get a tax receipt in exchange for the current value of your policy. Now, if you have one of these temporary policies, there's no eventual payout to it because it's temporary, so you have to pass away within the term of it, but you can change it to one of these permanent policies. If your health is still good, you kind of change it at whatever the rate is on that given day. But if your health is not so great and you couldn't actually apply and get a life insurance policy today, you can still do the conversion as if you got it for the same health status as you got the initial term policy for. And so if your health has worsened from one point to the next, the day you change it to the permanent policy, you have some value there, which is a great strategy to use. So even on a temporary policy, if you're thinking about using it for charitable purpose, I'd encourage you to talk to an advisor so that you can do some of these calculations and see if that's worth something to be able to donate to a charity.
Hands down. So there's a lot of people listening today saying, I didn't know that was a thing. And I can guarantee you there's a lot of financial advisors listening to that right now. And they're like, I didn't know that was a thing. So
And I'm sure based on the way I explained it, there's so many people out there saying, I don't even know what he said. So I still don't know
He's a
that's the thing.
soft six, so we're going to keep listening.
we're going to keep listening. So some valuable information here that you're sharing today, you know, and there's a reason why we bring this up, because it's such an important topic. You know, you and I know, and maybe the public doesn't know, but getting insurance has been getting harder and harder for people because it's kind of more controlled by some of these reinsurance companies that are all around the globe. So as an application was for life insurance 20 years ago, the questions are far different today. Even with this whole COVID, there's COVID questions in there too, and all these little things that come into play where it affects people's insurance. So why that's such an important thing you brought up with this term insurance is anyone who has this type of insurance going way back, check the policy for what it says. If there is one of these conversion privileges within the policy, please come talk to us or your advisor who you're currently working with. If your advisor's long since retired or you don't trust that advisor anymore, this is some of the stuff we do. And just to share with the audience, Ben, you're a broker, and part of our brokerage is we can contract with many of the different insurance companies in our country. So that's a benefit, I guess, to anyone that wants to talk to you or reach out to you, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. Be pleased to help or answer any questions that they would have.
Awesome. So shifting gears just a tiny bit to give another example of a project that you were involved with around the planned giving was this Give for Generations project. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So Give for Generations is actually a process brand that we began. And the heartbeat around that was that for a lot of philanthropic families, you know, there's the metrics and the physical aspects of giving to charities that they wanted to give to now. So they would say, okay, well, you know, a wealthy business owner or a philanthropic individual might say, oh, I'm giving X number of dollars to a charity every year. And really that's going to be based around the passions of their heart, you know, like what makes them sad, what makes them mad, what makes them glad. These are going to be things that lead you towards the types of charities that you should be involved in. And those are the things that kind of capture your attention, capture your heart, and you're willing to give your money to that, because money is emotional. So anything surrounding that, as soon as it grabs your emotion, you're like, yes, I want to be involved. How can I do that? I can give some money to that. And it's kind of like a piece of you is going towards that thing and making a difference. But in Give for Generations, we thought, well, what if something can be of a greater impact than just one individual or a couple trying to create an impact like that? What if they could instead take more of their family with them along that journey? And for charities, a big fear with charities, much like Greg brought up earlier in this conversation around COVID kind of zapping all of the donations, they think, well, you know, if we have these people that are giving to us regularly, what happens if these people pass away? Is all of this going to dry up? Are they going to continue to give? Are their kids going to continue to give? Do their kids have a heartbeat for this? And so we wanted to develop a program around just kind of, as the name suggests, giving for generations. How can we take our family along this journey? And not every family is wealthy enough to have their own foundation, although some are blessed enough that they can do that, and that is an amazing thing. But there is kind of a way that anybody can have a foundation of their own. My father passed away a number of years ago, and so I started something called the Forte Family Foundation at that time. And then people who were attending the funeral and wanted to kind of be involved, I just simply said, well, instead of flowers, why don't you make a donation to the Forte Family Foundation? And we did that through something called a donor advised fund. I don't know, have you guys ever heard of one of these?
I haven't.
Please share.
No.
I bet you everyone's wants to hear more.
Hit the Google with it. Google it. Any of your listeners can Google it, donor advised fund. And what a donor advised fund is it's a charitable fund that has sub funds beneath it or sub foundations beneath it. So it's a foundation that has a bunch of different foundations beneath it. So you can start your own foundation within the structure of one of these donor advised funds. And a lot of the major banks have a section of their bank that has a donor advised fund. And so I started the Forte Family Foundation in one of these structures. So what you can do is you can donate to your own foundation, and you get the tax receipt for donating to the foundation. Once you put the money in, it is now in your foundation. You can't take it out, but you can have it in there, and then you can allocate it to another charity as you see fit. So, and there's a bunch of other kind of situations around it. So you say, okay, well, I'd like this to go to Food for the Hungry, for instance, and we mentioned them earlier. So I could say, okay, there's so much money in this donor advised fund under the Forte Family Foundation. I would like to allocate X number of those dollars to Food for the Hungry. And so they'll do that from the fund. But I get the charitable tax credit when my money goes into the donor advised fund under our Forte Family Foundation, which is a fantastic thing. So if somebody has a lot of money and they want to give it to a foundation or get some tax credits for it, but they don't quite know exactly what charities they want it to go to, they can do that. So you can start a family foundation. You can bring these people along. The foundation can actually buy then life insurance on some of its major donors. So the foundation's buying a life insurance policy, money's being given to a charity. And when those key founders die or pass away, then the foundation gets the life insurance payment, which kind of super funds it. And now you have almost a revolving amount of money that could be given out for generations to come. So it's a great tool to be used in combination with a few of these financial tools to be able to create a long-term legacy for any giving in a family. And then you don't saddle the next generation with having to give to some of these charities at the same level potentially as their parents were.
And I think it's interesting too, because there's been so many challenges around charities also proving their worthiness. You know, some have been pretty dark side of charitable giving. It hasn't really gone to the people or the processes that you think it's going to. Do you think with this donor funded charities that they're better oversight on them, or what's your take on that, Ben?
The donor advised funds are strictly a structure in which people can start their own kind of foundation, but they're not really doing charitable works of their own through that. They have to donate it to existing charities. So from that perspective, really it's going to come back down to what charities are ending up with that money in the end. And that would be charities that you trust. So using a donor advised fund just kind of changes the flow of the money, but it doesn't necessarily change which charity ends up with the money.
I'm going to bring up another point here. So why this is another really, really hot topic, as I was working with one of our advisors in Red Deer, and that advisor works with a lot of clients that are north of 75 years old, and they've got a lot of money. And I asked, what is the biggest topic that keeps coming up in all your meetings? And you want to know what it was?
Tell us.
The number one thing was that generation with all this money, again, north of $1 million or these sizable estates, they're so worried about the worthiness of that next generation. And we talked about this on one farming family that I dealt with, the Frank and Joyce story, where they had 4 grandchildren that they wanted to pass on these $1 million checks to upon their death. 2 of them they trusted, 2 of them they didn't trust as much. So that has been the number one topic for this one advisor. And I can imagine if there's other advisors listening, if you ask these questions, you know, what's keeping you up at night? Here, this advisor was dealing with this meeting after meeting after meeting. So again, what you just shared with us, Ben, is again, yet another strategy that if you got all these dollars that you want to actually put to good use and you don't really trust entirely the worthiness of the next generation, here's some strategies that we can work with you on. There's a risk to doing nothing, I guess is the thing, is a lot of these estates that we work with, Ben, or we've seen, and you know, whether a client chooses to work with us or not, it's sad to see when something inevitable does happen. Someone does pass away and there's no planning done, and then it just kind of goes to the wolves. working with someone and putting that plan structure in place, not only are you putting it in the hands of the right person or structuring it properly, but you can use some of these techniques to really fund a charity, or like you said, what you described is maybe future different charities, of really putting that name, that family name, on a foundation or creating that legacy. I think that's beautiful that you brought that up. So what are some of maybe the other charities that you guys are looking at, Ben, in the Forte Foundation?
Well, Food for the Hungry was a big one. I really wanted to be some of the heartbeats that my father had, and he was kind of always a guy that was always looking to help children. So we're eyeing up some of those charities for sure. Orphans kind of stuff. Father to the Fatherless. My dad was a guy with a big heart, and he really, really wanted to do that kind of thing. So those are the types of things that we're really hanging on to. I think that, again, what makes you sad? What makes you glad? What makes you mad? Like, if something is capturing your emotion, that's the thing you want to get involved in. And there's so many worthwhile causes out there, and you can make such a great impact on a global scale with where you decide to put your money, no matter how much it is, because that speaks volumes about where you're at. And tell people about the charities that you're involved in. Don't keep it a secret. One of the things that I tell a lot of our business owner clients who are really philanthropic, when I walk into their offices and I walk down the hallways towards the boardroom or something, I say to them, you're involved with all of these different charities, but I don't see pictures on the walls. Put some pictures on the walls. Let your employees know that the hard work they're doing is also going to these charities and making this worldwide impact. Otherwise, a lot of employees work at jobs, which is, and they kind of think that at the end of the day, all of the money is just for the corporation or for the guy at the top or the girl at the top. It's not really something that's capturing their heart a lot of the time. But if they can have a real strong sense of what type of world impacts they're making, that changes the culture of a business. It lets people be involved in it on a greater scale. So, for some of these philanthropic individuals, I've really kind of encouraged them to let people know, hey, here's what's happening. Here's the kind of impact we're making. Because I know at our business, we tell our employees about, here's the impact that's being made with the dollars that are going to kind of that Food for the Hungry. And, I get to tell some of these stories about the trips, and, they're a cool organization because you actually can go on some of these trips and see live what's happening, which is a really fun thing to do. And you can kind of take some of your employees along with you on some of those trips and journeys. But I encourage people to really get out there and whatever's grabbed your heart, tell the world about it, because that's also a way of giving to that charity and making an impact as well.
It is. And you know what, you brought up a really good word, is it's inspiring, right? There's,
Sure.
a lot of things you've shared here today that are truly inspiring, but you bring a lot of wisdom and experience. So if there's someone out there listening, Ben, that kind of really wants to get a hold of you to hear some of your strategies and your wisdom and things you've brought to the table in form of solutions, how can they get a hold of you, Ben?
Well, our firm is 𝙇𝙞𝙩𝙩𝙡𝙗, so they could go to 𝙇𝙤𝙩𝙡𝙗 and all of our contact information is there. Fire me an email, give me a call. I'm pleased to chat.
And what about on social media? Do you have any social media stuff that you can be reached out to?
Yeah, I've got a personal social media account. BenForte77 is my Instagram handle. Not the year I was born though, so very confusing for people. I didn't realize that till after I'd started. I've posted a bunch of times, and then my friends were coming to me and say, why 77? It's typically the year you were born. I completely missed that idea. I just like the number 77 and tossed that on there. And so now people think that I'm born in 77, not the case. So yeah, just a different situation. So yeah, feel free to hit me with a follow. I have a relatively followable Instagram. I don't post a lot of food, so there's that.
Well, it's funny you bring up 77 because 77 is in my handle. It's a good number because I was born in 77. So it's funny you bring that up.
Boom, right there. So a small quiz to the listeners. Am I older than Greg, or is Greg older than me? That'll keep you up tonight. right? You'll never know.
Please
You'll
reach
never
out.
know
I'll tell
because I'm
you.
not actually giving away. Yeah, I'm not giving away my age. Greg just gave away his age. Who
I'm not
knows?
giving away my age either. Although,
Yeah, Leah, we're not even
some of
going to
them might
ask.
know.
Leah, we're not even going to ask. But I did say earlier in the conversation that Leah has known me all her life, but I've not, or yeah, I've known her her whole life. No, sorry, what did I say? You've known me my
I'm pretty
whole
sure
life.
you said
I've
you're
not
older
known
than
you
me.
your
I
whole
think
life.
that's what you said. Oh, hang on. That
That's the way the math works.
That's why you guys are all doing the math. Exactly right. Exactly. I love that you're doing all this wonderful work. You know that the difference really is the soul that people come to this conversation of philanthropic giving, and that you're giving a couple of ways for people to give long term, also for ways to have lots of flexibility around their money, because sometimes people don't want to be tied into just one thing. I think it's a great family conversation to have. Your dad was a shining example of this as a family conversation. And Greg has 4 little birds. And so, he would have, I was telling him about Uncle George's, work with the kids and just how important it is. Because I'm in admiration of people who are good fathers, which Greg Bird absolutely is a wonderful father. And we need more of that in the world. And so to your lovely father, that and the lovely, just legacy that he's left in you and your brothers, it's just wonderful, wonderful. I won't say young men, because then people will figure out that you're younger than me. Wonderful men. And but I think that's part of what we're also trying to encourage people to do, is to think about their character. It's like, what kind of character are you building? How could this kind of direction help you to get your moral compass back, maybe in alignment, when there's so much in the world to drag you off your center morally? And this is just one more way to really, kind of get your fingers into the clay, so to speak, and to find out what, makes your heart sing. Mm-hmm.
When you've talked about that, Leah, there's always a chance for redemption. Doesn't matter what choices, what behaviors, what actions we've taken in the past. There's some estates that I know, Ben, you've worked on and I've worked on, where guys have spent their whole life married to their job instead of married to their wife and spending time with their kids. And they've actually accumulated all this wealth. But, so it gets to a point in time where no matter what guilt, shame, whatever, and regrets maybe, is you can make a difference. It starts now, and doing that proper planning and supporting and getting behind the right causes, it can change someone around, honestly, like that. And Leah, you've talked about that lots in a lot of the podcasts you've been on.
Yes, because that's the never-ending story is one of redemption. Right.
100%. Yeah, and there's so many great worthwhile causes to get involved in out there, and the things that it does to your own heart. I shared one brief story about seeing that child in that thing, and what it's done to my heart, in the years since that time has passed. It's phenomenal. Like, it's just those shifts that can happen as you kind of get reawakened to the world at large. And having these things is super fantastic.
Restoring the pride in the family, restoring the pride in the father, making them confident in their ability to take care of their children and to protect the children, which is another huge thing on my heart that I talk about pretty much every podcast is, what are people doing to protect these little vulnerable children? And they're just so precious that once we see them as precious and divine little beings, and then we can get behind helping the adults who are trying to do adult things of taking care of the kids. That is, multiplying the effort, not just one at a time, but exponentially.
Yeah, we always have the attitude, Ben, on every show that if you can change at least one life, we've done our job. And you shared that story. I thank you for sharing that one of the young man that you really helped shape his life in a whole different direction. So I think even today, having this conversation, Ben, has been so powerful, not only to empower people to get involved, whether boots on the ground and rolling up their sleeves and helping, or whether it's from resources and creating legacy and donating money and charitable donations in the way that you can actually plan it, save some money on tax, and really make a difference, really get behind it and do something you love. So I commend you for that. So I think today has been a valuable conversation in that. I think that you have changed many, many lives. So for anyone listening today that wants to reach out, please get a hold of Leah, get a hold of myself. We'll get you in contact, obviously, with Ben, not born in 77, and we'll go from there. So.
Yeah, I mean, donating and being philanthropic, there's a lot of wins for the individual, both from a financial perspective and from a heart and value perspective. And again, do some research of your own, talk to some advisors. When it comes to donor advised funds, the legalese of it and the tax ramifications of it are different in every jurisdiction, as well as insurances. So talk to your advisors and rely on the advice of people who are in the know on those things.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we always like to close out the show with a song of the day. But before that, would you want to give any final words of wisdom to everyone that's listening today?
Final words of wisdom. Don't use your headshot photoshopped as an introduction. I think we've all learned our lesson on that. I think that's been the big shiny thing. And I would say don't keep everything you do from a charitable standpoint completely a secret. Let other people come along that journey with you. Song of the day, it's always better when you're going as a team. And I think that's a big part of charitable giving, both philanthropically and giving of your time. Let people come on that journey with you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's funny. I was going to do a rock song by Van Halen right now. That might be on Leah's next podcast. But I did ask you, what's your most inspirational song? And it's so funny that's Leah's jam, which is the Lego Movie soundtrack. Everything is awesome.
It's a family thing.
It's a family thing.
So are you guys going to sing, or do you want me to read the lyrics?
You should read the lyrics. I'm not singing it, but you can read the lyrics.
So do you play it as we go out? Do you play it?
We can't play it. We can only say the lyrics because we get in trouble with the people.
Oh, right. Yeah, the rights.
Lego would come down on us
Anyway, the lyrics are actually really, really good, Ben. So thank you for picking Everything is Awesome from the Lego Movie soundtrack. Is everybody ready for this one?
Ready.
All right. You are welcome. Great.
Here we go. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living out a dream. Everything is better when we stick together. Some have said you and I are going to win forever. Let's party forever. We're the same unlike you. You're like me when we're all working in harmony. So everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living out a dream. My niece Lily is like laughing at Uncle Greg right now reading because this is her favorite song too. So.
Yeah, she's probably thinking, preach, Greg, preach.
This is her jam. So Lily, this is the rest of this for you. Ready? Woo! 3, 2, 1, go. Have you heard the news? Everyone's talking. Life is good because everything is awesome. Here's some lesson on perspective. Lost my job. There's a new opportunity. More free time for my awesome community. I feel more awesome than an awesome possum. Dip my body in chocolate frosting. 3 years later, wash off the frosting. Smelling like a blossom. Everything is awesome. Stepped in mud. Got brand new shoes. It's awesome to lose. Everything is better when we stick together, side by side. You and I. We're gonna win forever. Let's party forever. We're the same unlike you. You're like me. We're all working in harmony. Blue skies, bouncy springs. We just named a few awesome things. A Nobel Prize, a piece of string. You know what's awesome. Everything. Dogs with fleas, allergies, a book of Greek antiquities, brand new pants, a very old vest. Awesome items are the best. Trees, frogs, clogs, they're all awesome. Rocks, clocks, and socks, they're awesome. Figs and jigs and twigs, that's awesome. Everything you see or think or say is awesome. Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when you're living out a dream.
There it is.
Thanks for the request of the song of the day, Ben Forte.
That was way better than any rock song you've done. Way.
Way.
He's got his groove, people.
And the beat, when you can listen to the song, it's catchy. It is catchy.
It is. So
Yeah.
everyone's going to do that. They're going to go put this song on.
It's
Yeah.
going to play in their head for the rest of the week, the next couple of weeks, maybe the next month. Anyway,
Yeah.
Ben, I got to thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. You've inspired hopefully millions as this show plays on in perpetuity across the world. Some great ideas, some great insight, intelligence, inspiration. Leah?
Yes, thank you so much, Ben. Been an absolute delight.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, love yourselves, love each other, mind your mind. That's all for us. Bye for now.